What's up, guys? It's Dalton with DT School Cards, where we are on the path to build a $1 million business via multiple sales channel and building a community, blah, 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 blah. But all jokes aside, guys, hey, it's Dalton with DT School Cards. Welcome to the channel. Yesterday, or I guess it's actually getting posted today, but it'll be yesterday when you watch this, whatever. I talked about communication and about confidence, and I also talked about being a subject matter expert. And one thing that I know helps me is the more I learn, the better I can communicate about things. That's why of all the things where Pokemon or actually the operations of running this business, what I can really speak on the best and I'm the most confident about is really business, right? Because it's what I did for so long. So one of the things that, and this is no shade to anybody, one of the things that, because like I feel like we're all like super nerds at heart, and but one of the things I think about sometimes is I feel like people in the Pokemon space for sure use like these really big words and these words that maybe you don't come into contact with every single day or you don't see every day, or maybe you never heard before, and it just makes the message sound way more complex or way more better or whatever than it actually sounds. I'm just a dude from small town Louisiana that now lives in Texas, but as much as I enjoy talking about Pokemon, what I really enjoy talking about more than anything is just talking shop. When I was an operator, restaurant partner, whatever you want to call it, you would just literally talk about operations every single day, and certain strategies you were using, certain things you were trying in the restaurant, things that you were trying to implement, trainees, whatever it was. And I like talking about that as well, with the Pokemon business. So what I wanted to do today is just take probably like 50-ish, although there might be some bonus ones at the end, 50-ish, basic business words or phrases and give them like just a quick definition. So as you're thinking about your business, as you're looking at it a little more analytically, or you're looking at it a little more strategically, or maybe you're talking shop to somebody else, you can have a better understanding of what these words mean. So just starting off the top, guys, we're just going to start rattling them off. Revenue. So sometimes people say sales. Oh, I had this many sales today, that many sales today, yesterday. That does confuse me because you don't really like communicate sales that way. So that's really confusing to me. So you would just say revenue, and then I would say orders, right? So in the past, when I've done certain videos or just written it down, I've looked at my dollar per order. I wouldn't say like my dollar per sale. I would just say revenue, right? And then revenue is just like your top line sales. That's before discounts, fees, anything like that. So gross revenue or gross sales, or just revenue. Profit. One word that I do not use a lot is the word profit, and I try to go out of my way not to use it because, again, in the business world, people don't really talk about profit that way. You might say net, what was your margin, what was your EBITDA, but they just don't really say like the word profit. And another thing that I guess I need to explain to you guys is, doing the Amazon thing, I really got jaded by certain words. That's why also like I always look at margin. I don't look at ROI, which is return on investment, what I'll talk about here in a second, because ROI is extremely misleading. It does not paint the whole picture, but it looks way better because it's typically like 5 to 10% higher, or more when you're looking at like a sale or order or whatever. As I said, I wouldn't say sale. So profit is the overall money that you're going to take to the bank that I'm going to deposit in DT's Cool Cards checking account or whatever. Loss is when your expenses are higher than your profit, right? Or your income. So you lost money last month. Now, when you're dealing with such an inventory heavy business, a cash heavy business, or some months you might lose money, other months you might make a lot more. Like if let's say you look at 4 months, if you lost 2 grand 2 months, but you made, 6 grand the other 2 months, what is that, 8 grand or something? You'd have a profit or a net of 8 grand. Expense is anything that costs money to run the business, right? For us, most of the expenses, I mean, cards are the biggest one, right? But that's more of like cost of goods sold. But an expense is just anything that you spend money on. What your mind probably initially goes to is going to be like supplies, like envelopes, paper. Well, stamps would be shipping. That'd be like a different line of your P&L. Asset. Asset is something valuable that your business owns, right? So, for example, if I ever, well, when I go to do my taxes next year, well, this year for next year for this year, the Roca scanner thingamabobber, that's an asset that I spent money on, and I can claim that on my taxes. So, like some people buy the big G wagons because you can claim that on your tax. Although I think that's like I think it's more of a depreciation thing. But either way, an asset is something that contributes positively to your business. Liability. Liability is the money the business owes, right? Or the other thing that you would say is, if let's say you buy a car, the second you take it off of the lot, it becomes a liability because you owe money on it. So the next one is going to be cash flow. Cash flow is money moving in, money moving in and out of the business. And cash flow can be negative or positive. It doesn't always just have to be a negative number, or it doesn't always have to be a positive number. When it comes to our business, the first thing you have to do is get cash coming in, and then over a small period of time, you're going to have to turn that into positive cash flow, right? Now, once that cash gets into your business, it is no longer called cash flow. At that point in time, it's capital. Let's talk about the difference between ROI and margin. Let's do that. Let's talk about the difference between ROI and margin. So your margin is going to be your overall profitability. So that's going to be the sale minus cost of goods sold, fees, shipping, whatever. Whereas ROI is just sale. So $100. If you spent $50 on the product, your ROI would be 50% because you netted $50. So again, that's why I do not talk about ROI, because it is extremely misleading. Next, let's talk about cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold is the inventory you purchased during that time period to sell to customers, right? So you can see over here where I keep all my cost of goods sold. Now, typically, I've said it before, when you look at your cost of goods sold for a business, it's going to be starting inventory plus what you purchase minus your end of month inventory. Well, for us, that's kind of like impossible, just with how everything changes and whatnot. Hey, if your bookkeeping is that good, hey man, more power to you. But the other thing that fluctuate with that is going to be the actual. Well, I guess no, it wouldn't be the value. See what you spent. So maybe it's a little bit easier. That might be something I'd like to look into one day, make an Excel spreadsheet or something. So let's talk about the next thought. Let's talk about the difference between wholesale and retail. So wholesale is what we, as people that sell, let's say booster boxes, Japanese products, Korean products, that's what we try to get pricing at, is wholesale, because wholesale is going to be the cheaper price. And typically, when you buy something in wholesale, you're going to buy it in large quantities. Like the other day, I sold all my Chinese to one store, and it was a very large. I sold all my Chinese to one card store, and since they bought so much at one time, I lowered my asking price, or my cost for it. Whereas retail is basically selling directly to customers. Retail is going to be, think MSRP. It's going to be the 30 or $40 Japanese booster boxes actually cost from the people that I get them from. So that's kind of how you think about that. Next is going to be marketing. So products or services that are used to build your business and grow your business, right? So for us, what we always talk about is content, content, content. But another thing that people don't really talk about in this space, because you need to make more content, have more followers, etc., would be SEO, Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, stuff like that. So that's probably something I do want to explore a little bit more, because when you think about building your business, the way you build it is by injecting cash. And immediately you're going to think, okay, well, injecting cash is going to be buying more inventory. And that is accurate. But putting money towards marketing would also be a way of injecting cash into your business. And then next, you have brand. And that's the identity of your company or business, right? So for DT's Cool Cards, and I think also when you think about brand, you have to think more about than just the name, right? DT's Cool Cards. And this is going to sound goofy, but you have to think about what DT's Cool Cards like represents, and the value that we bring to customers is also like in your brand. I don't know if intrinsic is the right word. I don't think it is, but I would say that's also like the value that's associated with your brand. Next is going to be your target audience. Your target audience is the people that are most likely going to buy your products, right? So, especially when I've looked at it a little bit, especially when you're looking into ads and making marketing campaigns like digitally or on the computer or whatever, you have to know who your target audience is because that's what the algorithm or etc. is going to go to, or it's going to spin the ads to. And the other part with that is, these days we have a new target audience with Pokemon cards because it's like everybody and their mom, wants to open up Pokemon cards or are buying Pokemon cards, right? Overhead. So one of the reasons that your local game store is going to charge so much, I'm not trying to argue. I'm just telling you it is what this is going to be a thought process is overhead. So overhead is going to be electricity. You would also probably say for the most part, overhead is going to be your controllable cost. Now I know electricity might change month to month, but for the most part, it's pretty much a controllable cost. But overhead is going to be your electricity, your water bill, your rent, stuff like that when you think about overhead. So someone like me that works out of their house, I'm going to have a lot less overhead that my business goes into, right? Or my business has. Invoice. So an invoice is a bill that requires payment. I've asked before, and people don't do it. And when you're dealing with big businesses, they typically go on like a net 30, which that means they have like 30 days to pay the invoice. And I've asked before if I can do that with some of my Japanese partners. They're like, no. So if we could ever do that, man, that would be great. Or at least like a half now and half later payment. But that just speaks to how difficult cash flow is in this business. That's funny. Next is going to be break even. So break even, and really what we look at break even is really around like that $5 price point, or they like the $49 to $50 price point as well. So when you're looking at break even, that's when like the dollar amount you're actually just you're making $0, and everything else above that is you're actually making money, right? So for me, I definitely look at when you're looking at your pricing, that's really you're going to think a lot about your break even point. Capital. So capital is money to use to grow a business. Now, one thing, and in fact, today I'm only going to be able to do 25 of these. I'll do the other 25 tomorrow. I didn't know I was going to talk so long about each one. But one big part of capital is using other people's money. OPM, others people's people's money, because ultimately that's how you're going to have to grow a business. Is a large injection of capital. So the difference between gross profit and net profit is your net profit is your ultimate like take to the home, take to the bank money, whereas your gross profit doesn't have some of the expenses, especially like when you're looking at like overhead and stuff like that. Typically you have EBITDA and EBITDA, which EBITDA is earnings for interest, depreciation, amortization, and rent. So that's what most like your gross. Hey, this is your gross, and then you have your net. So that's kind of how we would look at it. And then net margin, that's just your profit as a percentage. So again, most people go off margin. Hey, I'm doing 50,000 in sales on a 10% margin, so you're making $5,000 a month or whatever the case is. That's how most people articulate it, not in the words of just profit, profit, profit. Supply and demand. If there is one easy central overall thesis, it's what you learn in your economics class in high school. I remember reading an EGM, which is Electronic Gaming Monthly, and it was talking about Metal Gear Solid 2. That's how I was in freshman in high school. And I remember in between reading my EGM about Metal Gear Solid 2, my teacher, who was a coach, go figure, was talking about supply and demand. That is just how basic, but it's literally the foundation of our economy is supply and demand. When you have a second, go look at a TCG play. In fact, go look at Mega Dream. When you go and look at Mega Dream, hit the 3-month button. You will notice as prices go up, demand goes down, and then as prices go down, demand goes up. So it's the relationship between how much somebody wants it versus the availability of the product. Startup. A startup is a newly created business. Fun fact: if you make $400 on your own, as in let's say you sell $400 worth of Pokemon cards to your friend. Technically, you're supposed to report that money to the IRS, technically. But if you really want to get like a little more like fine grain with it, when you sell $5,000 on a platform like eBay, TCG Player, that's when they're going to give you a W-9 or whatever it is, and you have to file that as under taxable income. So once you have $5,000 from either TCG Player or eBay or whatever it is, you're technically a startup. And then last but not least, like I'm gonna have to only do 25. I don't know if I already said that. Oh, I did already say that. Last but not least, entrepreneur. So sometimes people laugh because you can put entrepreneur on your little Instagram thingamajiggy, but I will say that the entrepreneurial mindset is one of the most valuable mindsets you can have. And this is probably the last thing I'll leave you guys on. Back in the day, talking about video games, there was a video game called Vagrant Story. And it was done by Square Enix. The same guy that did Final Fantasy Tactics did Vagrant Story. But the main character on there, he was a risk breaker or risk taker, whichever it was. And that's always made me think of being an entrepreneur, because the entrepreneurial mindset is someone who takes risk. And at the end of the day, if you're going to start your own business, you got to take some risk. And that's probably one of the most fun parts about it, is taking some risks. So 25 today, I'll do 25 tomorrow. I didn't mean to yap for so long on each and every single one of these, but there's also like some significant editing I'm going to have to do in this thing as well. So DT's Cool Cards, check out my TCG Player Pro site. May Mayhem tomorrow. Buy lots of 150, 110s from me and all that sealed product over there. And you guys have a good one. I'll talk to you tomorrow.